Greetings, everyone, in the precious name of the Lord Savior Jesus Christ, who alone is worthy to receive all the praises, all the honor, all the glory, thanksgiving, and power forever belongeth unto Him. And I'm continuing on with part 4 of a series of videos on the pre-tribulation versus the post-tribulation rapture theory. And I left off, I'm going to get right into it. I left off at Matthew, the 24th chapter, where Jesus is talking about what's going to happen. And he's telling his disciples and warning them of what's going to happen. And he said to them, and starting in verse number 12, let's start with verse number 15. And when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, then it says in parentheses, whoso reads this, let them understand this prophecy. I'm talking about this prophecy. He said, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Okay, so right there, Jesus is warning his people, the believers in Jesus Christ, that will be alive during that time to see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. You know, Daniel the prophet in the Old Testament prophesied about this same event called the abomination of desolation. He said, when you see this, and this is going to happen, we'll go back and look at it later in the book of Daniel, but this is when the Antichrist comes, and he's going to set up he's going to go into the temple, which will be rebuilt in Jerusalem, and he's going to cause the sacrifice to stop. He's going to go in there and he's going to defile the temple. He's going to set up some kind of abomination to the Lord in the holy place in the temple, where only the high priest is supposed to go once a year. So he's going to desecrate the temple and commit the abomination of desolation. And so Jesus is warning the Christians and believers at that time, when they see this happen, they need to, verse number 16, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Why? For then shall be great tribulation. Here's the word. Tribulation. Great tribulation. Okay. At that time, when you see the abomination of desolation, that's going to be the signal that the great tribulation is getting ready to start. And we already looked up that word tribulation. It's the same word. It comes from the Greek word thlipsis. It means affliction, anguish, burden, persecution, tribulation, trouble. So at that time, there's going to be great persecution on the church, on the believers, those Jewish believers that are living in Israel at that time. There's going to be great persecution, and probably all believers, the church and everybody, anybody who's a believer in Jesus Christ during that time, there's going to be great tribulation, great persecution because of your faith in Jesus Christ. This is not the wrath of God. Okay. Now this is what I have that concerns me about what Perry Stone, the statement that he made in his latest video, where he's trying to defend the pre-tribulation rapture, his pre-tribulation rapture theory. He's saying that it's a different type of tribulation, that this is the wrath of God. And we're not supposed to go through the wrath of God, because the wrath of God is for the unbelievers and the wicked, which is true. But this is not talking about the wrath of God. Did it say wrath of God in there? No, it said great tribulation. The word tribulation means persecution. How do you make that to mean that it's talking about the wrath of God? I don't understand that. And we're going to look at all the scriptures that talk about the wrath of God in these videos coming up. But this is not talking about the wrath of God. This is talking about great persecution on the church. So he said, for then shall, in verse 21, Matthew 24, chapter, 21st verse, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. Okay, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Okay, then it goes on to say, verse 27, for as the lightning comes out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. That's a clue right there. Please remember that statement. Jesus said, for wherever the carcass is, there shall the eagles be gathered together. In other words, there's going to be a lot of dead bodies at that time before Jesus Christ returns. A lot of dead bodies. Immediately after the tribulation, verse 29, immediately after the tribulation, and again, we're using that same word, tribulation, meaning persecution, not the wrath of God, okay? Persecution. And if Perry Stone or anybody has a disagreement with the interpretation of that word tribulation, please look it up in the Greek first, and then, send me a comment and let me know if I'm wrong or not about the meaning of that word tribulation. It means persecution. As a matter of fact, if you read those scriptures in the Amplified Bible, it says persecution. And so I'm not the only one that's saying that that word means that word tribulation means persecution. But anyway, then we go on in verse number 29. Immediately after, Jesus says, after the tribulation of those days. What tribulation is he talking about? The great tribulation that he just got through talking about. The great persecution of the church. He said, after those days shall the sun be darkened. The moon shall not give her light. Does that sound familiar? The sun dark, the moon not shining. And another verse it said the sun will be dark and the moon will be turned into blood, which is the same thing. The moon won't be shining. The stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Well, now I'm not going to tell you that I know what the stars falling from heaven means. It could mean a number of different things. It could be the angels. It could be a meteor shower, meteorites. I don't know. But, and then shall, in verse 30 it says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Okay? You want to know when the rapture is going to take place? All you pre-trib rapture theory believers out there? Right here in verse number 30, Jesus tells you. Verse 30 and 31. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Verse 31, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, doesn't that sound like a rapture? And it tells us when it's going to happen. After the persecution, after the great tribulation, at the end of the great tribulation, after the persecution of the church, not before.